The thing about apex predators is that they don't stop being dangerous just because they're wearing a name tag. James Anderson scanned another protein bar. "That'll be 18 credits," he said with a smile to the Grellian merchant, whose tentacles were already reaching for his credit chip. The translator implant hummed softly behind his ear, converting his words into something the customer could understand. "You have a good day," the merchant gurgled, his breathing apparatus bubbling pleasantly. "You too, friend. Safe travels." James watched the merchant shuffle out of the cosmic stop, the fluorescent lights of the interstellar rest station flickering slightly as the automatic doors hissed open. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the merchant's hauler docked at Pump 7, taking on enough plasma fuel to make the jump to the Andromeda relay. Beyond that, the infinite black of space stretched out like velvet, punctured by distant stars that looked close enough to touch but were light years away. He'd been working this job for 8 months now, and he genuinely loved it. The simplicity, the routine, the fact that nobody was shooting at him or asking him to infiltrate a hostile alien warship to steal classified data while avoiding detection by guards who could literally smell fear. Those days were behind him now, way behind him. James adjusted his burgundy vest, the official uniform of Cosmic Stop employees, and glanced down the corridor toward the back office. Through the window, he could see Lyra restocking the energy drink cooler, her forearms moving in perfect coordination as she arranged the merchandise. She was Valerian, with iridescent blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the station's lights, and she had a laugh that reminded him of wind chimes. He'd been working up the courage to ask her out for 3 weeks now. Every time he thought he had the words ready, his enhanced brain, capable of calculating trajectory physics for orbital insertions in microseconds, turned into complete mush. "Getting soft, Anderson," he muttered to himself. The door chimed again, and a family of Crothans wandered in, their scaled hides gleaming. James waved at the younglings, who chittered excitedly at the candy display. Nobody here knew who he really was. Nobody knew that the friendly cashier, who always remembered their favorite snacks and asked about their journeys, was James Reaper Anderson, decorated operative of the Earth Defense Forces Shadow Division. They didn't know he'd undergone the Hyperion serum trials, the experimental program that had killed 83% of its subjects, but transformed the survivors into something beyond human limits. They didn't know about the nanotech swimming through his bloodstream, augmenting his already enhanced physiology to levels that made him a walking weapon system. And that was exactly how he wanted it. The Hyperion serum had been a desperate gamble by EDF High Command. Humanity had just made contact with the greater galactic community and discovered, to their horror, that they were among the physically weakest species in known space, while other races had evolved under higher gravity, denser atmospheres, or in environments that demanded superior strength and speed just to survive. Humans were embarrassingly fragile by comparison. The serum changed that. It pushed human performance to theoretical maximums, strength, speed, reflexes, healing, all cranked up to 11. James remembered the trials clearly, even though part of him wished he didn't. 6 months of agony as his body tore itself apart and rebuilt itself stronger. Watching fellow candidates die screaming as their organs liquefied or their nervous systems overloaded. But he'd survived. He and 43 others out of 250 volunteers. Then came the nanotech injections. Microscopic machines that integrated with his neural pathways, turning his brain into something approaching a biological quantum computer. Pattern recognition, predictive modeling, perfect memory recall, threat assessment running constantly in the background of his consciousness like an app he couldn't close. Even now, standing behind his register, his enhanced mind was tracking everything. The Crothan father had a concealed blade in his hip pouch, standard for travelers through this sector. The family's ship was docked at Pump 3, a Wanderer-class cruiser that needed new thermal regulators based on the uneven heat signature James's augmented vision could detect. Two Pelarian traders were arguing near the snack aisle about shipping routes, and one of them had elevated cortisol levels, suggesting he was lying about something. All of this information processed automatically, filed away, analyzed. And James ignored 99% of it because he was retired, and these were customers, not targets. He'd earned his retirement the hard way. 12 years in Shadow Division, running operations that would never appear in any official records. He'd infiltrated the Scarax Dominion to retrieve stolen Earth technology. He'd prevented 3 separate terrorist attacks on human colonies. He'd gone toe-to-toe with alien black ops teams that made horror movies look tame and come out on top. The final mission had been the breaking point, a hostage rescue on Titan Station where everything went wrong. Intel was bad, reinforcements were late, and James had to hold a defensive position against overwhelming odds for 47 minutes. He'd succeeded, the hostages survived, the terrorists didn't. But afterward, standing in the blood-soaked corridor with his armor cracked and his weapons empty, he'd realized he was done. Lieutenant Colonel Hawkins had tried to talk him out of it. "You're our best operator, Anderson. We need you." "You need me dead or burned out," James had replied. "I've given you 12 years. That's enough." They'd argued. They'd offered promotions, bonuses, specialized positions. But James had been firm, and eventually they'd let him go with full benefits and a generous severance package. The nanotech and serum were permanent modifications. He'd be enhanced for life. But that didn't mean he had to keep killing for a living. So he drifted for a while, trying to figure out who James Anderson was when he wasn't being the Reaper. He tried security work, but it felt too close to his old life. He tried construction, but his enhanced strength made him too conspicuous. Eventually, he'd ended up here at Cosmic Stop, an interstellar rest station positioned at the junction of three major trade routes. It was perfect. Quiet. Normal, boring in the best possible way. "James," Lyra's voice carried from the back room, musical and warm. "Can you come help me with this inventory scanner? It's being temperamental again." His heart did a stupid little flutter that his nanotech couldn't suppress, because apparently even super soldiers got nervous around pretty girls. "Yeah, be right there." He was halfway to the back room when the doors hissed open again. Three figures entered, and every combat instinct James had spent 8 months suppressing suddenly screamed to life. The leader was Torgalian, 8 feet of muscular grey flesh, with 4 arms ending in clawed hands. His companions were smaller, a Skrell and a Draxian, but both moved with the predatory grace of career criminals. All three wore mismatched armor, the kind you bought on black markets, and their body language radiated bad intentions. James's enhanced perception kicked into overdrive, processing details in microseconds. The Torgalian had a plasma cutter holstered at his hip, modified for combat use. The Skrell carried 2 energy pistols, illegal military grade judging by the power cell configuration. The Draxian had something bulky under his coat, probably a shotgun variant, good for intimidation and crowd control at close range. All three had elevated adrenaline levels, dilated pupils, aggressive postures. This was a robbery. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" James kept his voice friendly, casual, even as his brain calculated distances, angles, threat priorities. The enhanced processing speed that had once helped him plan complex military operations now mapped the entire store layout, identified potential weapons, and ran through 17 different response scenarios. The Torgalian's mouth split into what might have been a grin. "Yeah, human, you can help us. Open your register and empty it, nice and slow." Behind them, the automatic doors closed with a soft hiss. The Crothan family was gone. They'd left while James was heading to the back room. The 2 Pelarian traders had also cleared out. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. They'd waited for the store to be empty, except for James and Lyra. "Look, friends, I don't want any trouble," James said, raising his hands slowly. His enhanced hearing picked up movement in the back room. Lyra had heard the commotion and was probably looking for a place to hide. "Smart. The register probably has maybe 200 credits in it. That's not worth." "Shut up." The Torgalian pulled his plasma cutter and leveled it at James's chest. The weapon hummed as it charged, and James's tactical overlay automatically calculated the weapon's charge time, effective range, and optimal dodge vectors. "Empty it now, or I cook you where you stand." The Skrell moved toward the back room, his pistols drawn. "I'll check for others." "Wait," James started, but the Draxian cut him off by racking his shotgun with a meaty click. He said, "Shut up, human." James's mind raced. He could disarm the Torgalian in 1.3 seconds, close the distance, redirect the plasma cutter, use the alien's own mass against him. The Draxian would be next. Shotgun had to be neutralized immediately. The Skrell would be in the back room by then, which meant Lyra was in danger. 3 hostiles, enclosed space, 1 civilian. The numbers ran through his head automatically. If he moved now, he could probably take them all down before anyone got seriously hurt. But there would be questions, investigations. Eventually, someone would dig deep enough to find out exactly who and what James Anderson really was. His quiet life would be over. The EDF would probably try to recruit him back. His anonymity would be gone. Was Lyra's safety worth that? His enhanced hearing caught her soft gasp from the back room as the Skrell found her. His enhanced vision picked up the subtle shift in the Torgalian's grip on the plasma cutter, finger moving toward the trigger. Yes, absolutely yes. James was moving before he finished the thought. He lunged forward with speed that would have looked like a blur to baseline humans, his enhanced muscles propelling him across the counter in a fluid vault. The Torgalian's eyes widened. He was fast too, but not fast enough. James's hand clamped around the plasma cutter and twisted, redirecting the barrel upward just as it discharged. The beam scorched a black line across the ceiling, setting off sprinklers that had been installed for exactly this kind of emergency. Water cascaded down, and James used the Torgalian's surprise to his advantage. He yanked the weapon free and delivered a precise strike to the alien's throat, hard enough to disrupt breathing, soft enough not to crush the windpipe. The Torgalian staggered back, choking. The Draxian's shotgun swung toward James, but James had already moved. He threw the plasma cutter like a discus, and it slammed into the Draxian's face with a crunch of breaking bone. The shotgun fired wildly, blowing a hole in the snack display and sending bags of Terran potato chips flying like confetti. 2 down, 1 to go. James sprinted toward the back room, his enhanced legs eating up the distance in heartbeats. Through the doorway, he could see the Skrell holding Lyra with one pistol pressed to her temple and the other aimed at the door. Stop! The Skrell's voice cracked with panic. Stop, or I'll kill her. James stopped, hands raised, assessing. Lyra's eyes were wide with terror, her forearms frozen in place. The Skrell's trigger finger was taut but not quite squeezing. He was scared but still in control. The pistol at Lyra's head was a Corellian SR-9, a weapon James had used dozens of times. Effective range of 30 meters, charge time of 0.4 seconds between shots, and a tendency to overheat after sustained fire. Easy, James said, his voice calm despite the adrenaline singing through his veins. Nobody needs to die here. You can still walk away. Shut up. The Skrell's eyes darted between James and the doorway behind him, where his two companions were either unconscious or incapacitated. You're just a human. How did you do that? Lucky, I guess. James took a slow step forward. His nanotech was running 1,000 calculations, tracking the Skrell's muscle tension, pupil dilation, breathing rate. He was looking for the moment, that split second when the alien's attention would waver, when fear would override training. Stay back. The Skrell pressed the pistol harder against Lyra's temple, making her whimper. I mean it. I'll blow her brains out. You won't. James took another step. Because if you do, then I have no reason to let you leave alive. The Skrell's finger twitched on the trigger, and James moved. He crossed the distance in a burst of enhanced speed, his hand snapping out to grab the pistol at Lyra's head. He twisted it away while simultaneously pushing Lyra down and out of the line of fire. They struggled for a moment, the Skrell stronger than his size suggested. But James had been trained by the best and enhanced beyond normal limits. He drove his knee into the alien's midsection, each impact calculated to disable without killing. The Skrell's grip loosened, and James wrenched both pistols free. He spun the Skrell around and slammed him against the wall, pinning him there with one hand while holding both pistols in the other. Behind him, Lyra was scrambling to her feet, her breathing rapid and panicked. You okay? James asked without turning around. Lyra stared at James. Yes. Call station security. Tell them we've got 3 suspects for armed robbery and attempted kidnapping. James kept his voice level, professional, the same tone he'd used 1,000 times on operations. They're non-lethal, but they'll need medical attention. Lyra stared at him for a long moment, and James could practically see the questions forming behind her eyes. But she just nodded and pulled out her comm unit with shaking hands. James marched the Skrell back into the main store area, where the Torgalian was still gasping for breath, and the Draxian was out cold in a puddle of water and broken chips. He made the Skrell sit next to his companions, then retrieved zip ties from behind the counter and secured all 3. Station security arrived 6 minutes later, led by a grizzled Pelarian named Grix, who James had shared coffee with on multiple occasions. Hells, Anderson, Grix rumbled, his compound eyes taking in the scene. What happened here? Just doing my job, James said with a shrug. They tried to rob us. While security hauled the would-be robbers away and began processing the scene, Lyra approached James. She'd stopped shaking, but her eyes were still wide. James, she said quietly, you moved so fast. The way you fought, it was like you'd done this before. James met her gaze and saw the intelligence there, the quick mind that was already putting pieces together. He could lie. He could make up some story about self-defense classes or lucky reflexes, but she'd seen too much and he was tired of pretending. Yeah, he said simply, I have. Are you? Are you some kind of soldier? I'm retired. Retired soldiers don't usually work at gas stations. This one does. James managed a tired smile. I wanted something quiet, something normal, something that didn't involve getting shot at. Lyra was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, to James's surprise, she laughed, that wind chime sound he'd grown to love. Well, you're terrible at picking quiet jobs. This is the third robbery attempt this year. Third, James frowned. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because you're new, and we didn't want to scare you off. Good help is hard to find. She reached out with one of her hands and touched his arm gently. Thank you for saving me. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, I did. James looked at her, really looked at her, and decided to hell with it. I've been wanting to ask you something for weeks now, but I kept chickening out. Figured I'd wait for the perfect moment. He gestured at the chaos around them. This isn't it, but I'm going to ask anyway. Would you want to have dinner with me sometime? Not here, somewhere nicer. Lyra's iridescent skin seemed to glow a little brighter. Is this your strategy? Save someone's life and then ask them out while they're emotionally vulnerable. Is it working? Yes, she said, smiling. Yes, it is, but I get to pick the restaurant. Deal. Grix returned, his expression serious. Anderson, I'm going to need a statement, full report on what happened. And I have to ask, your personnel file says you're baseline human, but what I just saw. He trailed off meaningfully. James sighed. I'll give you a statement, but some things are classified. I'm happy to answer what I can, but there are limits. EDF, Grix asked quietly. Something like that. The Pelarian nodded slowly. Well, classified or not, you saved souls tonight. That counts for something. Hell, it counts for a lot. He clapped James on the shoulder with a manipulator arm. Come down to the office when you're ready. We'll keep it brief. After security left and the scene was cleared, James and Lyra spent an hour cleaning up the mess. The register would need replacing. The ceiling would need repairs. Half the snack inventory was ruined. But nobody had died, and that was what mattered. As they worked, Lyra asked careful questions, and James gave careful answers. He told her about the Hyperion serum, about the enhancements, about his time in Shadow Division. He didn't tell her about specific operations. Those would remain classified until he died, but he told her enough. So you're like a super soldier, she said, sweeping up broken chips. And you chose to work here, at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. It's not nowhere, James corrected. It's somewhere, and it's a good somewhere. Honest work, nice people, decent benefits. He paused. Plus the view is great. She caught him looking at her and rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Smooth, Anderson. I try. They finished cleaning as the station's twin suns began to rise beyond the windows, painting space in shades of orange and gold. James stood at the reinforced glass, looking out at the docked ships and the infinite black beyond, and felt something settle in his chest. This was home now. This strange little gas station with its alien co-workers. He'd come here looking for peace, for normalcy, and he'd found something better. He'd found a place worth protecting. The three robbers had made a critical mistake tonight. They'd seen a human cashier and assumed weakness. They'd looked at James Anderson and seen an easy target. They should have looked closer. They should have noticed the way he moved, the way he watched, the way his eyes tracked threats even when he was smiling and making small talk. They should have realized that apex predators don't stop being dangerous just because they're wearing a name tag. And if tonight's incident made it back to the syndicate, and it would, news traveled fast in the criminal underworld, then maybe other would-be robbers would think twice before hitting Cosmic Stop. Or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe someone else would try their luck, thinking they'd succeed where these three had failed. James almost hoped they would, because as much as he loved his quiet life, as much as he genuinely enjoyed ringing up customers and restocking shelves, there was a part of him that missed the action, the challenge, the feeling of knowing he was making a difference, even if it was just protecting one small gas station on the edge of civilized space. You're smiling, Lyra observed, coming to stand beside him at the window. What are you thinking about? Just that I'm glad I work here, James said honestly, and that I'm looking forward to that dinner. Me too. She leaned against him slightly, and he felt his heart do that stupid flutter again. Though I should warn you, I did some research on Earth foods. Apparently your species is something called hot sauce that's popular. I want to try it. Lyra, that's a terrible idea. Valerian digestive systems can't handle. I want to try it, she said firmly. James laughed. All right, but don't say I didn't warn you. Outside, a new ship docked at Pump 5, and through the windows James could see the crew beginning to disembark. A family of Drenni, by the looks of them, with younglings that would probably raid the candy aisle and parents who would apologize while buying everything anyway. Normal, peaceful, perfect. James turned away from the window and headed back to his register, Lyra walking beside him. He logged into the system, ran a quick diagnostic to make sure everything was working properly, and prepared for another day of honest work. Somewhere in the galaxy, the EDF Shadow Division was probably running operations. Soldiers like he used to be were infiltrating enemy installations, preventing catastrophes, saving lives in ways that would never be publicly acknowledged. That was their burden now. James had carried it long enough. He had a different mission these days. Ring up customers, restock shelves, make sure the coffee was always fresh, and maybe, if he was very lucky, convince a beautiful Valerian woman that he was worth dating despite his chaotic past and tendency to occasionally beat up armed robbers. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't the stuff of legends, but it was his, and he'd earned it. The doors hissed open as the Drenni family entered, their younglings already making excited noises at the candy display. James smiled his best customer service smile and called out a greeting. Just another day at Cosmic Stop. Just another day being James Anderson, former super soldier, current cashier, and the last man in the galaxy anyone should try to rob. Because sometimes the shepherd just wants to tend his flock, but that doesn't mean he's forgotten how to deal with wolves.